Welcome back to another episode of Full Circle with me, Onyx. And let's get into it. Let's, you know, build our magical power. I got my tea. So we're ready to go. Let me adjust this little, there we go. There. A little better balance on all these objects holding up my phone. So I've definitely had some realizations, and one of them is kind of building on this concept of a construct and thought forms. And wizards use symbols, wizards use thought forms to perform their magical feats, to command. So the use of symbols and moving symbols is a ritual. So, kind of thinking on the lines of that, the development of visualization becomes very important because it helps you train your mind to move energy in accordance with your will for effective outcomes. So I'm not really talking about law of attraction and like all that stuff. I'm talking about developing the mind as a skill, as a muscle, to pick up, that which we call magical forces and utilize them. To attract them, you could say, but it's more like to communicate with them. So you become a communicator using thought form creation. Now, when we move into psychology and occult psychology, it really dawned on me. Like, I realized my inner demon, that voice in my head, that inner critic, was what I like to call Agent Smith, just like in The Matrix. And the reality of it is Agent Smith is the Matrix, kind of. And in a weird way, made of nothing. The only thing that sustains it is me. So I go from being Mr. Anderson to being Neo, self-realized. I'm the one who creates. I'm the one who has choice. I, can exist outside the matrix and inside the matrix consciously. So I can work within the dream, within the hologram. Now, when we start looking at psychology for everyday people, people are being tormented by the inner dialogue, the voice in their head, or the many. They're being tormented by shifting emotions and memories of the past. They can't get over what happened to them in the past. They can't realize they only exist here now. So thinking about thought form creation, what is a memory? A thought, a feeling slapped together with an image. And so it's like a movie reel. It's our history, it's our memory, they're thought form creations. They are constructs. When you realize your memories is actually something you create, you could then say reality is make believe. Make believe. Make it believable. We're making it believable. So you could call it fiction. You can call it a dream. So the mystic says, awaken from the dream. You know, being woke means you realize the fakeness, all the effort it takes. So you can wake up on different levels. You can realize society is fake. Our culture, our customs, our history are fake. And really all we have is people on a planet. You can wake up at that level, But you can start waking up at metaphysical levels where you start looking at objects and understanding they're only there through attention. What you focus on, you make real, you make solid, you make believable, and you experience. So you animate it. Focus is the wand of creation. So it's the go force, it's the G force. So that's why playing around with holding an image in your mind, doing visualizations, guided imagery, things like that can be very helpful on your magical path, but could also be helpful on your psychological path. When I was younger and I was doing a lot more magic, very successfully, I'd go on these really amazing journeys, like through the underworld, to a castle, meet power animals, hang out with gods, and things like that. And at one point, I decided, can I dissolve these things? Can I unmake them? If they are thought forms and creations in my mind, can they be dissolved? And so I would conjure up a symbol in my mind's eye, in my inner vision, and then I would disintegrate it. And so I'd create and destroy, and some of my favorite meditations is when I dissolve myself. So now, today, I realize what an amazing skill to be able to dissolve Agent Smith, the voice in my head, dissolve the history of me, on psychological levels. How far can you take it? Who knows? Who's to say you can't just work with visualization and successfully dissolve all of your psychological baggage, So, magical ability is on the mental plane, where I think a lot of so-called psychic, intuitive, empathic abilities, you could say, reside heavily on the emotional plane. So I would say that would be a defining difference. Yet all paths are one, and eventually they cross each other. And I started looking at, comics, the X-Men and Marvel and things like that. And I was like, Jean Grey is a powerful psychic, but all the feats she's doing with her telekinesis and her mind reading, telepathy, and things look like the same feats as someone would do with magic, summons a psychic shield, levitate, fly. And so I love to use fiction to figure things out, because what's the difference, really, when you start looking at it? So then I started looking at, how wizards are portrayed in animated shows. We have to show their magic. So, it shoots out like a beam of color, and sound waves, and it looks similar or identical to the psychic ability effects. How do you show a psychic shield? You kind of make a glowing bubble, or an energy exchange. It looks like a laser beam or waves and effort, like, I'm trying to keep you out of my head, or, ward you off, and so I real I think, and so when you think of psychic actually means mind. Psyche is the mind. So once again, the utilization of the mental plane. In Tibetan spirituality, the phrase is commonly used, all is mind. So I think when you start thinking of higher mind, an expanded mind, using mind power, developing the mind. Magic, the development, is the ability to focus, to thought form create. So now that we've kind of got that out of the way, you can work on dissolving your baggage, and you can take these basic fun activities to new levels for yourself. You can do creative visualization to dissolve cancer, tumors, work on an illness in conjunction with your healthcare providers. I can't say legally that through magical means, through personal intention, meditation, and energy, that you're going to get the results, because that's the warning label, that's the disclaimer. I'm not saying that. I'm saying you can feel proactive, you can take some personal steps, some actionable steps using your abilities of creative visualization, of intention, of getting all your senses into the experience, which would translate as energy. The more you focus, the more you draw energy and magnetize it there, the more it concentrates, and the more you activate it. So when you're not aware that magic operates on principles of physics, then it seems mystical. It seems religious. You assume the ritual itself has the power. You assume the word has the power. You assume the location has the power. And under the law of belief, yeah, but it's like spiritually bypassing. You eventually want to gain that power for yourself and become an active participant in the creation story, in the unfoldment of events. And in order to do that, you have to have an above average mind, an above average ability to concentrate, to feel. You have to heighten your five senses to where you're piercing the veil. The veil is the glamour, the smoke and mirrors that obfuscates your ability to see more into reality, more into the unknown, the hidden workings. So if you have your developed psychic abilities, it's much more easy to understand how magic is mechanically working for you. And yeah, so that's the actual power of visualization. It's not, there's a famous, quote that says magic isn't about making beautiful angels. And actually, I beg to differ. Through my own magical making of angels through creative visualization, those thought forms were then animated with higher consciousness, took on a life of their own, and it was from higher mind. So they became portals of power. They became containers of abilities. I remember I was in a witch war between a witch and me, a wizard, and we went toe to toe. We were friends. We got in a little argument, and she was a Virgo, I'm a Pisces, and so we had a lot of fun doing psychic wars. And I remember during one of these wars in the astral plane, my higher self came in, and basically I had a dialogue with a greater part of my mind, and it's happened before. But anyways, in this situation, the higher mind basically said, whatever form you give me, such is the function, so is the function. So if you turn me into a unicorn, I'm going to have the greater range of ability of horses. So I can gallop, I can pull things, I can kick, I can make noises. But because you chose the form of a horse, I'm kind of limited and unlimited to that range. Yes, I'm your higher self, but the functionality of it, the force of it, when it's within the framework of a horse, will be functioning at the highest level of that horse. So, what will you make me to fight for you? You know, your avatar that you created. And I go, a wizard. And so, my higher self took the form of a white wizard and was then able to cast spells, able to summon and banish, and so banished her from my castle. And then rearranged the castle, all the doors and locks, which is in the range of what a wizard could do, but then it gets the heightened boost of it being my higher self, higher mind. And so its powers were increased. And so that's a living example of form and function, and forms being container of psychic forces. So if you, in your imagination, create a sword, the functionality of it will be to cut. So it's a direct, one-for-one translation, perfect language. Sword, what do swords do? You can cut and stab with a sword. What are they made for? Cutting and stabbing? At what? Whatever you direct it towards. Really no confusion there. So then when it's empowered with a higher power, a higher psychic force, it's going to do that even more so. So it might be able to cut through a house, cut through a dragon, whatever it is that a roadblock of yours, okay? It could cut through a tractor, or whatever, so it might not be the best tool to use to cut through cloudiness. It might be better to use a fan, and then when you empower it with a higher force, that fan works even better and changes the weather in this reality and in that reality. So weaving the worlds, when you play in the realm of creative visualization, if it's dark, you're hanging out in the sub-realms called the etheric realm, very close to the earth and sometimes adjacent to the earth. So most magic that you feel, most magic that's done is close to the earth, has more magnetism and energy. You feel the effects strongly. It's done in the etheric realm. Or it's transferred through chords. Chord is where you feel a direct blast of energy. Usually you'll feel it around or within one of your 7 chakras, and you'll feel it affect your organs. That's through chords. And so those are usually the 2 modes of most people's ability range, especially if they're like using herbs and they're using their emotions and their everyday human thinking, feeling functions. When you kind of transcend that, you move to the realm of light, you're even further from earth magnetism and you're operating at more subtle planes. So that's usually when you don't feel it, but you might eventually feel the effects of it. So it could take some time for it to move down the planes or really convert through different densities to then see the fullness of it. And once again, I always advocate being more direct and simple in your practices. If someone's really bothering you, get the law involved. If someone's really bothering you, you might have to quit your job or transfer. use the power of your actual words and your actual tongue, the language that you learned. Write a letter. So a lot of times people try to go through psychic, intuitive, and magical means to figure out what their boyfriend or girlfriend is thinking, or how to win them back, or how to get revenge, or get their bonus at work. And that's actually kind of a backwards process. It's much more functional to go ask for the raise, and then to ask why you didn't, and can you apply again in a few months, or what do you need to fix, like talking with people directly. So if this dimension is one of the lower planes, you've already talked on the higher planes, you've already worked it out. The last domino to fall is here. So if you choose to then go talk to your boss again, it's already working down the planes. Once again, the last domino to fall is to go have that conversation. The more aware you become, conscious you become, the more you start to understand how you're working in other planes simultaneously. It shows up as a dream, it shows up as a vision, it shows up as synchronicities. So if you're struggling to figure stuff out and you need the assistance of a psychic, that tells me your own abilities aren't strong enough and you haven't utilized them in your everyday life. For example, a dove, there used to be lots of doves around my house. And my ex-boyfriend, when we met, he had a dove as a pet and it died when he got in his first argument with me. Anyways, so doves was a symbol in my environment that I used to understand where we were, how close and how distant we were, how connected and how unconnected we were within our relationship. Odd thing, this last fall, I was walking my roommate's dog and there was a dead dove, like under a tree. So I knew the relationship was dead. And then was I going to resurrect it? No. I was like, I'm just going to let it be, let nature take its course. So the symbol is very direct, very meaningful. And so, I would, sometimes when I'd be questioning our love, two doves would fly to the back patio and land by the window so I could see them. That's never happened before. And that was when we were still in love. We had a long distance relationship and we had communication problems. And so the doves was symbolic of what we were actually feeling and thinking on other dimensions. It was the manifestation on this plane. It makes sense that we were using technology, long distance communication, something moving through the air and the currents is going to be a bird, and it's going to be a bird he had as a pet. And it's also the bird of love in many cultures. So it was a perfect symbol. Very direct, very clear, not mysterious. And so I had to keep an eye on it. So the meaning is also personal to you. It's how your brain can understand things. So that's an example of understanding symbols and synchronicities manifesting. So that's like reading signs and omens. Unfortunately, a lot of people don't understand the planes of creation or the dimensions. So when they're trying to be psychic and give psychic readings, they're just going with the general interpretation of the cards. And of course, they're flipping over a lot of cards because they're not understanding how the planes work. They haven't truly developed their psychic abilities through creative visualization, meditation, and concentration, and enough practice under their belt. So I've seen a lot of horrible readings. online, a majority, I would say 90%. And we sweep it under the rug with beliefs. We sweep it under the rug with uh, a nice glamour, entertainment, um, you know. And we sweep it, we make it very general. And most of them honestly suck. It's just, we get within a story, there's something believable. Within a story, so on the quantum level, all stories are real. So that's how it kind of resonates with you, but then it never really pans out. Okay. But that's a whole different subject. It's really not what I wanted to make the video on. I really want to just get into our meditation. But we're just talking about thought form creation and how vital it actually is. Since we have a few minutes left, we'll just finish with it. Talking about glamour and delusion, or should I say illusion and delusion. So life is like smoke and mirrors. And I look at the mirror effect is the objects, people, places, things, buildings, things of form that can take a form, so your lover is an object. Now, the smoke part is the emotions you feel about that object and maybe the story and the thoughts. So you might approach that object and you might be afraid of it, or you might label it as sexy and beautiful and attractive and valuable. And you feel, because you've labeled it that's what it is. So you're interacting with this reflection, this 3D object, this moving statue. And you've really fallen for the smoke and mirrors. You've been caught in the dream, the illusions. The delusion is the subjective. So you walk away and you drive home from that interaction and you're thinking about them and you're feeling about it, and now you feel offended or you feel worried. All that kind of like inner stuff is the smoke and it's the delusion. But the interaction you actually had with them in the 3D plane was the illusion reflecting back. And so the illusion of the dream, of this construct, this outer construct, which is still within, it's designed that way to get you to believe it. It's supposed to be believable. And you're supposed to have a fun experience and understand, learn, and grow, or who knows? It's entertainment, It's a bizarre entertainment, but it's called life. But we sometimes, that dream turns to a nightmare. The same power of belief can make you believe in fear, false evidence appearing real. So you have anxiety, depression, worry, stress on a psychological level because you're believing too much into the illusion, and now you're creating delusional in your head. You're having delusional. So this gets even more advanced, but then not really. The same thing that you were doing with the outer world in the outer dream, it's also happening on an inner screen called your subconscious, called your inner self, the way you subjectively internalize things. So it turns into a nightmare inside your head that's delusional, but it gets empowered by the same force. So they're constructs. What is a construct? They're ideas put together, solidified as beliefs, then accepted as truths. Those constructs carve out a box, a limiting box. It makes the mirror world. It makes the bubble that you're stuck in. It makes your reality, And So, and you need it. Otherwise, you would dissolve into infinity. And you would not even be able to process all that information. The unbounded, the unlimitless. So things need a container. Water is contained by the ocean. You know, lakes are contained. A cup of water is contained. Everything's contained. All the water on our planet is contained to the planet, kind of. You know, it's evaporating into space too, but for it's through containment that form is created. So we need a construct. We need containers. So working with thought form creation as a wizard, you can create a container, a form, but you also can learn to dissolve it. So you can write a truth, a science of the times, and then you can write a new science for a different age with a different technology and a different truth. So what cures one generation might not work for the next generation, the new generation. So life is a creative act. It's an art form. So life is creation. Creation is change. So we create rules. And so there's a flexibility to reality. Hence, we call it reality warping in comics. We call it quantum mechanics and quantum physics and all sorts of a catchphrase word to, it's more of an accepted vocabulary for mainstream people to flirt with magic. Just call it quantum. But all is mind. So, and you are within it. You ain't going anywhere. You always exist. This fundamental truth grants you unlimited power. This is actually how we can understand each other. It's because all minds are actually one. On a broader level, we are the ocean. You're experiencing yourself as a drop in the ocean in a drop. So the fractal-like nature of reality, the holographic nature of reality is mind, and it's unlimited. And there are no boundaries. There is no container for the unlimited mind. Hence, you are free.